as Africans, we have a lot of similarities, but we are not the same. And sometimes when we drown our individuality and we don't celebrate it and we don't point it out, we can get perceived to be one group of people, which is erroneous. Individuals, by now we should be able to stand unapologetically on the world stage and be able to not only identify ourselves. We as that I have a strong respect for my culture and a strong respect for the roots of my culture. And if you look and you study, I can talk about Shona and Ndebele because those are my cultures and the tribes that I come from. And I can identify that our ancestors were never cruel to women, that different roles were given to different people in a group. That's how we functioned. And that most of the decisions that were made were mostly practical and functional. If you were to see a typical village meeting or family meeting, in our culture, I'll talk particularly the Shona culture, the men sit on the chairs, the stools, the women sit on the ground. So we have to sit on the ground, and if I go, that is what I do, I go. But if a stranger walks in and says, why are the women sitting on the ground and the men sitting on the chair? I'll instantly say it's subjugation, the woman is being suppressed, that's why they're sitting on the floor, the women. But if you take a closer look at it, it's actually not subjugation, it's actually a declaration of protection. The men sit on the chairs because should an invader come in, who is the first one to get up? An unhealthy amount of pressure put on women that they should be married by a certain age, have children, a husband, and that basically you are some sort of a failure if you're not married. And the focus is so much on marriage and being married without understanding that there should also be a focus on the relationship itself.
A woman must be able to buy her own pants. Now, we're not taking this literally, but I have lived for the day I would be called Mrs. So
the expectation becomes realistic. You don't walk into the room expecting people to understand you.
So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first text-based discussion interview of the year, proudly presented by EL Network, a subsidiary of Everything Literature Limited. We're thrilled to have you join us for what promises to be an insightful and inspiring session. Today, we're honored to host Grace Maguri, author of Picking Hand and Song of the Survivor. Grace is a remarkable figure whose contribution to literature and education have sparked meaningful conversations and transformations. Leading today's discussion is no other than Olamide Popoola, myself, a literary enthusiast whose passion for storytelling is sure to guide us through an engaging dialogue. So as we delve into today's conversation, I really want you to open your mind, reflect on the insight that we'll be sharing, and join us in exploring thematic discourse in the text, specifically Song of the Survivor. So once again, thank you for being here, and let's get started. I hope you're still with me. You're with us, Madam Grace?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear everything.
Oh, okay. So at interval, if there's anyone who is trying to speak, you may not hear them until we grant the permission. So it may just be your voice and myself, and also Precious that you can hear for now. Okay. So Grace Maguri is a powerful voice in African literature, using her storytelling to interrogate sociocultural issues that shape our everyday life. She is a strong advocate for African culture and national identity. And through this, she seeks to challenge stereotypes and spark meaningful conversation through her works. In this interview, we'll be delving into our latest book, Song of the Survivor, to uncover the themes of resilience, identity, and the complexities of womanhood in the African context. So, Madam Grace, let's get to hear from you. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, inspiration, and your journey as a writer.
Oh, okay. My background, I'm Zimbabwean. That's, I feel, is very important to identify yourself. I like being African, but sometimes I feel we drown our identity by not particularly picking out that we are from different countries and cultures. So I'm Zimbabwean, and my inspiration, I can say, has been always, I looking back now, I think it was always to write a story that I would want to read. So I started writing at the age of 10, and the inspiration has always been from different writers. From 10 years old, it was Enid Blyton, but as you grow, you fall in love with other genres. I've been a staunch fanatic of like mystery writing. I've loved that. Agatha Christie, I was a huge fan. And those basically different writers, different voices. And obviously, Ngugi wa Thong, Wole Sinyoka, we studied these in school, and you fall in love with the different forms of writing, the different ways that they're writing. But a lot of the writing, as much as it was fascinating and beautiful, did not seem to talk about a story similar to mine. So that's why I felt the need to write my story. Maybe there are people who have experiences similar to me who would want to read that story in particular. So I've just been a huge advocate in writing the story that defines different cultures and different peoples. So this is where I'm at now.
Okay, thank you very much. And in respect to you being an advocate for African culture and identity, how would you perceive, or how do you perceive the similarities and differences within our cultural identities across the continent? Because that was actually where you started your conversation from.
Yes. As Africans, we have a lot of similarities, but we are not the same. And sometimes when we drown our individuality and we don't celebrate it and we don't point it out, we can get perceived to be one group of people, which is erroneous and sometimes insulting. When I don't know if you've traveled, but many times when I've traveled, somebody would say, "Oh, you're from Africa," even though you've said you're from Zimbabwe, and then they'll say, "Oh, I have a friend from Kenya, maybe you know him." And we start off joking about it, but it gets to be annoying after a while because we are different. And there's nothing wrong with being different. It's not about pointing out each other's errors. It's also it's really about pointing out what makes us different, what makes us unique, what makes us beautiful. We're a beautiful, diverse continent, and we should celebrate it. And we should acknowledge it a lot more and be distinctive in the way that we present ourselves on the global platform.
Okay, so with what you've just said now, in your view, do you think this misrepresentation of our identity, that is African identity, is a form of neo-colonialism or just a reflection of ignorance? Because, Africa is seen as just maybe a village, or let's say a country, and not as a continent. So do you think it's a form of the Europeans still trying to write us down, or it's just a sheer form of ignorance?
It's a mixture of everything. I feel it's a mixture because us as Africans, as individuals, by now we should be able to stand unapologetically on the world stage and be able to not only identify ourselves. We as Africans also play into that narrative. Why is it we always feel we are more sophisticated when we mimic Western things? Why are we, when we mimic Western culture, we then say we're more sophisticated? If somebody cannot speak English properly, we're quick to say, "Oh, this person is not sophisticated or not advanced because they cannot speak English." Or we we point out each other's flaws. Oh, this one cannot eat with a knife and a fork. But many African cultures eat with their hands. So we are the ones who do the most damage to ourselves. And we cannot change other people. I don't believe it is our duty to change other people's opinion. What is important is for us to find our own identity, be proud of it, stand so firmly on it that they will be forced to acknowledge it. And we start off by being proud to identify ourselves with our differences.
I was about asking that how do we get to reshape the narratives about ourselves, but you just answered that, which has to do with we being confident, we being proud of ourselves, not being ashamed in any form or whatever it may be. So I would like us to take a look at the interpretation of gender roles, still within the African cultural context. What's your perspective about that? How should we interpret gender roles, our cultural context?
We should. I'm a feminist, but I feel an African practical feminist. And I know when the people hear the word feminist, they immediately say, wow, radical. It's okay.
Yeah.
I feel I'm practical in that I must share that I have a strong respect for my culture and a strong respect for the roots of my culture. And if you look and you study, I can talk about Shona and Ndebele because those are my cultures and the tribes that I come from. And I can identify that our ancestors were never cruel to women, that different roles were given to different people in a group. That's how we functioned. And that most of the decisions that were made were mostly practical and functional. And it wasn't disrespectful. I'll give an example. If you were to see a typical village meeting or family meeting, in our culture, I'll talk particularly the Shona culture, the men sit on the chairs, the stools, the women sit on the ground. So we have to sit on the ground, and if I go, that is what I do, I go. But if a stranger walks in and says, why are the women sitting on the ground and the men sitting on the chairs? They'll instantly say it's subjugation. The woman is being suppressed. That's why they're sitting on the floor, the women. But if you take a closer look at it, it's actually not subjugation. It's actually a declaration of protection. The men sit on the chairs because should an invader come in, who is the first one to get up? The one on the chair. The men traditionally carry the weapons because that is their job. They are the protector of the community. They're the protector of the family. And as a woman, they are saying, sit, kneel down. Don't worry about it. I got you. I'm handling this. So if you look at the culture more practically, then you will see that there's no subjugation in this. This is an act of protection. And I feel as Africans, particularly, we need to go back to our culture and understand why were certain things introduced? Why did we go for some of these things in order, before we start saying, let's change. It's not fair. Let's change. Let's look back at the practicality of it. Why was it introduced? What happened? Before we rush to change things, our ancestors were not stupid. So I just feel strongly that, but it also is making a truthful analysis of what we have now. The good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Just look at it as it is and then start speaking what we can do to progress, where we are and how we can. So the stories I write look at the ugly truth. This is what we have. How do we move forward now? What do we do about it? Is there anything we can do about it? And we are practical about it.
And talking about your story, specifically your latest book, which is Song of the Survivor, taking a look at the title itself, personally, when I interacted with it, I was like, who is the survivor? How do we explore the essence of survival as portrayed in the story, is it about resilience? Is it about resistance, or is it about reinvention? That's the way you portrayed your characters.
Each character yes, it's about mostly reinvention. It's about realization of your own strength. Because one thing I've discovered is we can advocate as much as we want on different platforms for women, especially to protect themselves if they are in particular situations, how to protect themselves. But if the narrative of self-protection is not strong in them, they will succumb to cultural and social pressures that force them to stay in uncomfortable situations, that force them to. There are so many stories. We all have heard the stories. We know what they are. And we just need to hear more songs of the women that survived, the women that made it through, that are thriving, that are standing firm and saying, well, if I can do it, then you can too. And it changed the narrative in somebody's head. It's mostly about self-preservation. It's not an attack on anyone or any group, but more about an encouragement for a movement towards self-preservation, especially vis-a-vis the social, economical climate in Africa.
Okay, self-preservation. And talking about self-preservation, I would like us to look at the subject of song as used in the title of the book. Was it an attempt of you, or is it an attempt of you discussing liberation from gender-based subjugation through a deeper understanding of cultural and gender identity? Like, what is the nature of the song being communicated?
The song is essentially because it's a motivation. It's a song. The book itself is a motivation for self-preservation, a motivation for change, self-change. It's not about trying to twist or change a cultural perspective, though, yeah, it does that eventually. But it's more like self-help book, facing, like what you've just mentioned, dehumanization situations, and situations obviously that call for somebody to think outside the box. It's just a song. Like, when I thought about it, I wasn't thinking too deep. I was just thinking of a song, the way you go to a gym and you're working out, what plays in your head. You have whatever song that plays in your head that pushes you, that drives you to keep going, even when you're tired. What do you use to motivate you to keep moving, even when your whole being is just trying to fall apart and trying to say, stop, enough? So the song is just basically that, what plays in your head when you're in a situation that could be compromising.
Okay, and still on the matter of song, I just want us to look at two key excerpts from the book, the novel. Mm-hmm. One is from the angle of marriage, the marital aspect, and the other is in the aspect of economy. So particularly, taking a look at it, I took note of this. You said, I have lived, or the persona, the character in the text said, I have lived for the day I would be called Mrs. So let's have a reflection on societal expectation and the pressure of women regarding marriage.
Yes. There's been an unhealthy amount of pressure put on women that they should be married by a certain age, have children, a husband, and that basically you are some sort of a failure if you're not married. And the focus is so much on marriage and being married without understanding that there should also be a focus on the relationship itself. They should also be a focus on the person themselves. Like, what are you getting out of it? Like, you're going into this thing, what are you getting out of it? But it's just like this, it's instilled from birth. As you're growing up, what will your husband's people say? You must learn how to wash properly because we don't want to be embarrassed when you go to your husband's home. These are statements that we hear as we grow up as young women. And those statements then end up coming out as that at some stage you must get married, and the earlier the better. And there's a certain level of dignity that is accorded the married women, and those that are not married are then sort of given some stigma is attached to them. Those that go to are married and then are divorced or are widowed also have stigma. And it's unfortunate, but our culture seems to have a sort of way of rejecting those that don't fit into a certain mold, and then giving a lot of accolades to those that fit into that so-called mold. Yet nobody is considering all the other socioeconomic factors that go into such decisions. And a lot of research has been made that successful marriages in communities are mostly highest where the communities are financially stable. So so when you have communities that struggle with things like poverty and other things, marriage is not such an easy thing. And with the changing landscape that we are all encountering with social media and things like that, so many things have come to distort and pervert the whole perception of what marriage is and how relationships should be formed.
And taking a look at how our society already have some expectations, particularly about the female gender, the key except again is you mentioned that a woman must be able to buy our own pants. Now, we're not taking this literally, but trying to examine it from the economic independence aspect and dignity for women in African society. To what extent can we place balance for the modern African woman who, based on African socioeconomic stand?
Well, I don't know, because it's a lot deeper. The extract you read was from one of the stories, and I think it's a lot deeper because it was said by a mother-in-law to her daughter-in-law, because the push was, now you have not given us children. In other words, you are useless to us because you have not given us children. Therefore, if we're going to continue to have you in our household as part of us, be useful and get a job. Be useful, and we don't want to really look after you, but now that you're here, we don't want the financial responsibility of you, so just get a job. And the statement was said as a woman must be able to buy her own pants, as in basically we're not going to fend for you, we're not going to buy anything for you, we don't really want you here, but since you're here, might as well make yourself useful. And that's where you see, in our cultures, I don't know, in Nigeria, where a woman must be useful. If you are in a marriage, if you are in a relationship, if you are in anything, you must find usefulness. And that can be, you are useful because you have given us grandchildren. You are useful because you have allowed us to, you've brought wealth into the family. You're useful. So you must be useful, or else I think you're treated a certain way. And yes, that's when some of the abuse starts from.
And taking a look at the matter of gender equality and equity, with what you've just said now, to what extent can we redefine traditional roles without losing the essence of cultural values?
That can easily be done, but I feel that is a conversation that each culture must have on its own. As I write, I'm presenting Shona and Ndebele culture and things that are important to them. I will talk about myself. As an independent woman, I can fend for myself financially, and I can fend for my family as well. But if I'm in a how can I put it? If I'm in a cultural setup with this family and there's other people around, there are certain things that we do out of cultural respect. Even if I was the one who is financially strong, I wouldn't start sending my husband up and down in front of people. You understand? I would immediately play my role as the wife, and he would be the one to say, okay, my wife, come and get, can you get me some food? Can you do this? And that. And the women I've interacted with are extremely happy to play that role. We are extremely happy to, how can I put this, submit to our husbands. But the thing is, there has to be a line drawn, a careful line drawn between the act of submission and to somebody who his intention is to protect you, and the act of submission who uses that as a weapon to harm you. So that's why I feel the element of self-preservation is extremely important, because you should be able to distinguish between the two. That is your submission leading to you being abused, or is your submission warranted because you are in a safe space with a partner that cares about you? There's a difference. You don't go submitting to everybody. That's dangerous. You need to know when, how you are supposed to submit. And like I said, this is a conversation that each of our cultures should have separately on their own, because you have what is distinctive to you and what is precious to you. So what values do you have? And then let's be practical as well. If you as a husband are not going to work and your wife is spending the whole day at work, are you going to starve the whole day waiting for her to come home and cook for you? That's not practical. You need to do something whilst she is busy in order for you to have a balanced relationship.
Okay, now that brings me to you are a strong advocate for African feminism, and generally it's believed that the African society is patriarchal in nature. To what extent do you agree to that?
Okay.
Is that a kind of overgeneralization?
No, there's a huge generalization, because we have a lot of matriarchal cultures in Africa, including Nigeria, by the way. Do you know that Nigeria actually has a tribe where women are allowed to have more than one husband? So it's not just patriarchal. That is like a blanket statement. But yes, a lot of them are. And I don't see anything wrong with it being a patriarchal society. I believe where reason is extremely strong, being patriarchal or matriarchal doesn't matter. It doesn't move it, because I feel if we are practical the way our ancestors were practical, because if you look at some of the things that they did, they were not acts of selfishness or greed or whatever. Many of them were practical acts of how do we survive our situation. For instance, we'll look at polygamy. Why polygamy? Look at every community. What did the men do? They fought. They went into battle and they fought. So if you're going to have men from time to time going away in waves and coming back less, what's going to happen? You're going to have more women in a community than you have men. So what are you going to do? You're going to be practical about it and say, okay, fine. Look, it might be ideal to have just one man, one woman, but let's just be practical about it. That doesn't make sense. We want our community to grow. Population is beneficial to us. The more people, the better. So yes, a man can have more than one wife, but there was a system. It wasn't just let's wake up, scratch our heads and let's do this. There was a system. There was a way it was done where the woman was still respected and her children, offspring were taken care of. But it's a patriarchal society, but it's not necessarily dehumanizing the female person inside that society. if we are going to advocate and say, oh, we are not going to overhaul who we are in search of fairness. We don't have to remove our identity and what makes us in search of a better system to live in, a fairer system to live in, with more practical, how can I put this, attitudes, less stereotypes, more practical, and actually dealing with things that are a cancer in our society. Right now, a lot of things, we're afraid to touch them because we say, oh, then we will be stereotyped, then we will look like, we're afraid to touch certain issues because we think those issues, if you touch it, after all, we're African. No, let's how can they dismantle this thinking and accept that a lot of our cultural practices, some of them, we don't even know what they are. Some of them, we've forgotten the purpose of them. Some of them would, if we do go down a rabbit hole and look carefully for why these things were brought into our communities, why our ancestors, I keep saying, our ancestors were not stupid. When they came up with some of these things, they had a reason behind it. Let's look at it. Is that applicable now? Should we continue with this? Should we let go of this? What works? What doesn't? I think this is what is practical for us to do. And the feminism part of it is not trying to diminish the role of the man. Quite the opposite. It's simply the man is his role is established because he has happy families. But what we are saying is, let's not have ideologies, let's not have ways of thinking that we normalize, that harm groups of people within our communities. Let's not normalize bad things. Let's not say it's okay. It's not. Let's look at them, deal with them practically, and help change where we need to change.
So if I get you right, it's not really about trying to say, oh, polygamy is bad, but about looking at the rationale behind it, why it was started in the first place. Because from your statement, it's more or less like there's a gradual shift in mindset. The mindset before was for communalism, for the growth of the society. That's okay. When we have more men go to war, it's important or it's beneficial to the society for this man to marry more wives so that he can give birth to more children and we can have more male children so that we don't have a lot of females and we won't be able to defend ourselves when there is war next time. But now we have it from the selfish mindset whereby someone just want to get married to another wife all in the name of, as a man, as the system design, I am opportune to marry more than one without any given rationale behind it.
Yeah.
If I get you right. That really makes sense, because I love the fact that we are touching the deep core of our African culture, about some aspect of our culture specifically to address. And I love the fact that we've been able to address the issue of objectification and importance of self-awareness for women while you were speaking as well, because with that, females these days, or women these days, don't get to struggle with their identity anymore. They need to realize that if I'm submitting to this person, I should understand the rationale why I am submitting and all that. But to what extent, or not to what extent now, at what point do you think females or women should know when to let go? Because I know the text talked about some matters on marriage, relationship, specifically, and in the area of unrealistic expectations in marriage.
There's a story in the book called Samuel's Wife, and in the story Samuel's Wife, I was trying to portray a happy marriage. And in that happy marriage, somebody was having a self-reflection of her own choices. And I think we underestimate the power of a powerful narrative. When we present the positive as much as possible, that this is the one, this is the good, we give people something to identify with. We give women, the younger girls, because right now they're quite frankly traumatized by what they see, like in the media and social media and other things. What are the stories that we present are quite traumatizing. They've seen quite a lot. And when you look at what is healthy, what is expected, then they can build their own rationale, because you cannot define for a person what they should want. It's not practical. But to say, okay,
that
this
reminds
is a
me of
good
a
thing.
fact.
If you want
change an
this,
adult,
this is what you
right?
should go for.
Like what you just mentioned now resonates with a part where you mentioned that you cannot change an adult.
No, you cannot. You cannot. It's not practical. I think sometimes that is an extremely erroneous thought process that, oh, if I'm good, I'm very, very good. At some point, this person will change and become better. I don't think so. No one, you can't. A person, Maya Angelou said, once a person shows you who they really are, believe them. And you should. Believe what you see. If you've seen this is the kind of person, you can try. God give you the strength to try and change them. But at some point, you need to give yourself rest and understand that this person is not the person for you, and do what you feel is best for you, given your circumstances.
Right. And still on the matter of marriage, what do you think should be the fundamental reason for entering into marriage without societal pressure? Is there a particular age you can suggest that, okay, this is a ripe age for a woman to get married?
I think that's not practical. I think a woman should get married when she's ready, and when she's a woman and not a girl. I think that is basically it. Above 18 years of age, legally defined as a woman, if she feels she's ready, she's ready. Because society, and I think a lot of million stories that I've heard, women get married at different stages of their lives, and some have been the best decisions she made, and some was the worst. But we are not God, and I don't want to play God. Everyone's life has got its own direction, and the most important thing is to pay heed to your own direction. What if you in your life are going to get married at 35, then it's fine. If you get married at 42, then fine. I don't think there should be any stigma on that. If you're getting married at 18, fine. There shouldn't be an age where you say, okay, this is it, because I think it draws away from the greater purpose in your life. We are not born to just get married. There's so many other things we can achieve in our lives. I remember when I was 26 and I was telling my mom, I really want to get married. All my friends are married. And she goes, why? And I was like, I want to have babies and stuff like that. And she looked at me and she goes, you're trying to get a degree and you're working on the national syllabus, and you're crying about doing something that rats and monkeys do. And I was like, yeah, every single animal reproduces. So why are we making it such a big deal? If you get to a stage where you're going to get married, that's fine. Happy for you. That's wonderful. Enjoy it. It's an amazing experience, and may God bless you with a good marriage. But if you're not yet there, that's also fine. Just relax and wait for the day to come. But I think we create so much problems because we're trying so hard. We want to fit into this stereotypical idea of my life is happy. Why do you work so hard to make people believe that you have a happy life instead of just looking for the actual happy life?
And talking about the actual happy life, what really makes a happy life?
A self-fulfilled individual. A self-fulfilled individual makes a happy life. Whatever makes you content. Everyone's different. But what do you find that contents you, that makes you happy? I've seen some women that are amazing community builders that love to work in the community. I've seen some amazing people. Look, we can look for the things that build each other. instead of looking at petty things that bring each other down. If it's not your time, it's not your time. When the time comes, then celebrate it. But whilst you're waiting for that time, there are so many things to do. Get busy with your life. Find something, find an occupation, do something for your community, do something for yourself. There's so much to do. There's so much that can be done. And I believe everyone can find that purpose in their life. We all have a different gift.
And as you were speaking, what came to my mind is, while in the process of trying to find fulfillment, self-fulfillment, because that's like a key to what makes one happy, how do we match it with a partner? Or what should one look for in a partner so that one does not get to lose one's peace in the process of maybe trying to, that's an issue in marital context these days, whereby, for instance, in the news 2 years ago, we have a woman, a renowned artist of such, who, in the process of trying to satisfy a partner, ended up not just losing her own form of self-fulfillment, but lost her life. So how do you think one can strike a balance? Is there a point where one needs to take a leave if it seems as if it's going to threaten your peace of mind? Or to what extent, or at what point do you think, no, you should still make a compromise and go further in the relationship?
That's why I say everybody's story is different. Let's learn each other's stories and let's learn the story of the survivor. There are a myriad of things that happen in people's lives. And it's very, very difficult to be distinctive and say, okay, at this point, there's a woman who will not take one slap. If she gets slapped once, that's it. She's walked out the door. And there's another one who will endure beatings. I know somebody who endured beatings for 5 years, but when she finally got fed up and threatened to leave, the husband actually changed. And they stayed together and they continued another 15 years together. And it's not so, but that's not everybody's story. Whether you stay or you go, it has to be your decision, and it has to be a decision that you are comfortable with, not you getting that from others. That's why I said ignite the self-preservation light inside your own head, because you are the one in that situation. Other people don't know what is going on in there. And I think we have glorified the victim mentality in our African society, which is extremely dangerous. We sometimes want people to come forward, and I don't want to lie to you. Our communities, our societies are not very sympathetic. If a woman comes with a bump and a bruise, oh yeah, it happens, and we pretend we don't know, we don't see. We wait until the eye is removed to say, whoa, that was bad. We wait until something really extreme has happened.
So there's a degree to it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We keep on saying, no, maybe he will change. And there's that hope that maybe he will. And let's be honest, some have. So at the end of the day, what other people say doesn't matter. We just need to get to a point where we say, woman, if you're in a situation that you feel is dangerous, do what you need to do to survive. Does it mean running away? You know your situation, because it's very unfair for anybody to come to you and say, just leave. Maybe financially she's incapable of looking after herself and the children if she leaves. So how can she just leave? She can't. We should not, like I told you at the beginning, in seeking a solution, we must be practical. Somebody walking in and seeing women sitting on the floor and men sitting on a chair immediately screams subjugation. But you don't know everything. You don't know the full story. So when you don't know a full story, it's very dangerous for you to come and start prescribing solutions, prescribing recommendations. You can't do that. So the people who are actually involved, who know that the women who are sitting on the floor know that we are sitting on the floor because we are safe. Our men are sitting on the stools because it is easier for them to protect us when they are on the stools. These are the people that should make the decision of how do we improve or how do I protect myself. That is the person that makes the decisions, because you, an outsider, should not recommend, because we can say there are institutions, we can refer them to places where they can go for help and things like that. But ultimately, self-preservation must kick in at some point, and the woman needs to do that which she feels necessary in order for her to get out of a dangerous situation. And that's all we can recommend is, you know your situation better, do what you need to do to survive. If it means running away, fine. If it means first saving up, then running away. If it means calling your parents because you know maybe will be a solution, fine. What does it mean? But going around playing the victim and hoping that somebody will feel sorry enough for you to fight for you, that's dangerous. Many times people will just be saying, okay, well, she's not doing anything about it, so maybe I don't want to interfere in marriages, because we are also, I don't know about Nigeria, but in Zimbabwe, people are very conscious about putting mouth to somebody else's marriage or to somebody else's issue. We don't want to talk too much about it. It's a problem. They'll sort it out, And honestly, I'm not saying that women should just walk out of marriages willy-nilly. That would be like counterproductive. But also, I'm not saying that they should stay. What I'm saying is, every single person know your situation and learn a way to survive your situation. Find a way to survive whatever it is that might be harming you. Move away from it. Act to protect yourself.
Wow. Now, to relate this to the global issues on the African landscape, the way African narrative, fictional narrative have been misconstructed, misrepresented, I feel like if we are to take a look at it, that means it is within our own hands to use our own fictional narrative, reshape the perception of Africa globally. I don't know if you get what I mean by that.
Yes, I agree with you. There obviously has been a move for African writers, African movies, African productions to also just put themselves out in the world there. And we have tried, but we still find so many misconceptions out there. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And another thing that we need to do as ourselves is to accept the fact that we are different. And as beautiful as a Nigerian story is, it doesn't necessarily speak of the same values or the same culture as mine. And I can appreciate the beauty of a story coming from Nigeria or from Rwanda or Kenya or from Tanzania. I can appreciate its beauty and still understand and learn a little bit about the culture. And that is something we need to do to rise up and be extremely distinctive in our differences, because we are perceived as if it's one small little place. Africa is the second largest continent, and we seem to be lumped into one place, and we seem to have one story, one narrative. I sometimes when you watch social media and somebody says, oh, I was talking like somebody from Zimbabwe, and then they mimic a Nigerian accent, as a Zimbabwean, I know I get offended, because I'm like, no, we don't sound like that. It's not because but it's like, that's not my identity. Clearly, you don't know me. You don't know anything about us. And I feel we can't blame the outsiders, because You can't change people's opinion. You don't just wake up and change their opinion. And if somebody is determined to see the worst in you, they will. They will. If they have a reason to continually look down upon you, they will. They will. If it serves their purpose that you do not have confidence in who you are, they will continue to do that. So we also have to take back our narrative and take back our dignity by clearly defining who we are, sharing stories amongst ourselves, celebrating each other more distinctly. Who are you as an Igbo, as a Yoruba? What is your story, and how can I learn from that story? Learn about the Shona culture, Kenya, Rwanda, and different other languages. How do we learn about these languages? How do we learn about these cultures? I'm in a country where the only thing that people know out there on the world platform is of one of their worst moments. Yet the culture is so rich and so beautiful. I've seen some amazing things, the dance, the music, amazing, beautiful, but we're not sharing that. We're not sharing. No one knows about that. It's hidden because we are not celebrating each other's diversity. Instead, we're following the same narrative. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes. In terms of following the same narrative, that means we're following the narrative that we are of the same color, and we fail to realize that we do not have the same cultural narrative. And it's a kind of struggle within our mindset because, for instance, we've all been boxed into the belief that as Africans, we share the same cultural narrative. Whereas from what you've just said now, it's not that way. And saying that it's not that way, we should not pick an offense in it. That does not mean I'm trying to say I am not related to you in any way, because we have some shared similarities. We can't deny the fact that we have shared colonial history, that we have the color, obviously, and all that. Mm-hmm. But in terms of some cultural beliefs and way of life, because culture has to do with the way of life, we do not share some certain things. And the more we accept this, the more it would have influence on our national growth and unity, if I'm correct.
Yes, and I think the expectation becomes realistic. You don't walk into the room expecting people to understand you. You walk into the room knowing that we are different. And if maybe in your culture, if it's polite to sit down, in my culture, it's polite to stand up when talking to an elder. Once we understand those cultural nuances, then you won't be quickly offended. That, oh, she walked in and she just sat on the floor. What kind of a person is that? Because we'll be quickly offended. If we are going to look through somebody through your own cultural context, learn other cultures so that you can respect that, oh, in her culture, we sit. In our culture, in the Shona culture, young people sit, they kneel when they are talking to their elders. And I've seen in Yorubas as well, they prostrate when they are respecting their elders. This is part of our culture. This is who we are. And when we reject it, we are rejecting ourselves. It's important for us to learn, to respect, understand each other's culture, and where we need to change, let's try and make the change come from within. Because that is the more realistic change and it's less dangerous. When the change, if we keep on carrying on with bad habits, then an outsider comes and starts recommending. And they're recommending from a place of ignorance because they are not a part of that culture. They don't know the things that drive that culture. So you, the ones in the culture, must be able to drive the change because you must be able to see that, oh, there's this thing that has happened. How do I fix it? How do we fix it?
Wow. This has been mind-blowing for me because honestly, some of what I intend asking you've answered while you were speaking, and I don't want to be the only one having this conversation. We have some of our persons online, of which Precious is here to take the Q&A. So she will ask one of few questions. She has gone through the book as well.
Okay.
And she has one or two to ask. If I call on Precious, I was about asking, is your writing aimed at correcting societal wrongs, preserving culture, or both? Because it's more or less like you're speaking in terms of gender-related issues, identity crises, and at the same time, you're so concerned about culture.
Yes, I am concerned about culture because I'm scared we will lose our essence if we are not careful. We will lose a lot of things if we are not careful. And writing is the best way for us to preserve it for future generations. We've learned a lot about our ancestors through maybe passing down the stories, but we've lost a lot of things. Like I'm saying, I'm literally reevaluating certain cultural aspects because I also grew up. My parents thought they were doing me a favor by making me go to good school, speak English, act English. And it felt good and it felt like an advantage. But when you get onto a world stage and they say, what do you do? How do you do this in your culture? And you have no answer. You start saying, wait, there's something wrong with this. So you have to go back to the idea that, no, I have to learn a little bit more about myself, who I am, who am I, my grandmother, my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, who were we, what were we, and why did they do this? And through that journey, you understand, and I keep saying this because we need to understand it. We need to get it into our head. Our ancestors were not stupid. They were not stupid. And there's a reason why so many of these cultural practices came into play. Was it to right a wrong? Was it to manage a situation? Was it to control something? What was it? And then when we understand the cultural nuances behind some of these things, then we can have a better respect for it. I think in one of the stories, there's a story of a young lady who was tasked by a family. I don't know if it happens in Nigeria, but in Zimbabwe, some tribes, not all, if a man cannot have children, his wife will have relations with the brother or someone in the family as an arrangement so that she can have children. And he can continue his family life. Those become his children, and basically they grow up as his children. It's covered up. It's a family thing. It's covered up, and it's a cultural practice. And you look at it, and you're like, and people will come with all sorts of moral standards and what have you. Oh, that is wrong. How can she agree to this?
Okay.
How can But if you look at it, it was a practical way. There was no IVF machines back then. So what would be the solution now? What would be the solution now? What are the practical things that a person can do now? Because we are not in the same position that we were like that time when this cultural practice was created. We don't have to blindly follow it because it also has its pros and cons. It also has its troubles that it brings with it. So we cannot blindly follow it.
Yeah, but more or less like knowing the point where we have to redefine some certain concepts or rates without losing the
exactly.
Okay, Precious, are you there? And if anyone in the audience has a question, please maybe do by comment. Yes, Precious, we can hear you. So I'm just trying to let other people know that if they have a question, they should do so by raising the raise of the hand. So Precious, over to you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you very much, Madam Maguri. Thank you so much for this session. Thank you for choosing to do this with us. It's been an inspiring discussion so far. I believe many people will have questions. and we will try to take as much as we can within the confines of our time. So I think we already have a hand. So Mr. Olagoke, you can go ahead with your question, please.
Okay.
If you can hear me, Mr. Olagoke, please go ahead with your question. Okay. Madam Miriam Machiso, please.
Okay. Let Mr. Olagoke unmute himself now. He was muted before now, so he can speak.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I was about sending you a personal message, Olamide. Madam Grace, I think this is the most interesting conversation I've been in, and I'm saying this from the perspective of a Nigerian in the diaspora. I live in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands we do have an inter-diaspora conversation where people of African origin and people who are in the diaspora and who have all they now know is the diaspora, and they are trying to connect back to their African authenticity. We have these conversations. So the point of view where you are getting to come from, especially where you begin to mention we're trying to be victim of everything is a trauma and everything looks like it did not have a reason, and you consistently mentioning that our ancestors are not stupid. Everything at the time, everything was solution based, that they were trying to solve a particular problem at the time, and the method in which they went about it was the best they could at that time. And if we begin to adjudge those decisions by the current realities, then we would be it is like a puzzle. It would not match, right? So I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to even speaking with one of my personnel to see if we can also have you on these sessions. And I'm also looking forward to buying your book. I think I would send a message to Olamide for us to have that conversation. But during the discourse, I did type down two things, which is the concept of usefulness, and I was trying to know, is that really unique to a woman? During the discourse, there was something about usefulness. If a woman is not able to give birth to a child, quote and unquote, our usefulness diminishes. Is that unique to a woman? And second thing, is there a correlation? There was also the discourse about personal happiness, and I'm now of the opinion of a communal growth, because in Nigeria, in different African countries, we are so very personal, right? But if you go outside of Nigeria, you see, example, the Jews, how they get to, whatever they are doing it for the interest of the community, of the Jewish community, right? But we also get to think that when people are in diaspora, they think people at home are very communal. But if you come back home, I really do not see that communality in interest, maybe at this current moment. But when you talk about personal happiness, and now that I'm home, I'm trying to say, is there a correlation between personal happiness and communal happiness, and how can we build that bridge between the two?
I think what we need to do is to come up with a solution. I don't know which question I'm going to answer first, the usefulness one or the one about personal happiness. But I strongly believe that personal happiness comes about when the community is healthy. So if your community is realistic and healthy, like I said, look at the situation where traditionally, I'm talking about a scenario where women would sit on the floor and the men sit on the chairs. A woman sitting on the floor, knowing she's protected, is happy. She's comfortable. And she understands the role that she's playing in that context, isn't it? But then put her in a place where she is traumatized. She's not going to cooperate. So you are not going to get members in the community that are willing to work with you if there's a certain group that is being traumatized, being abused, or you are normalizing the trauma. If they talk, they will talk once, they will talk twice. After a while, they keep quiet and they simply start doing that which they feel is best for self-preservation. And self-preservation is very important, but we don't want people to get to a point whereby it's everybody trying to self-preserve. That's why the stories are important, so that we identify the things that we can change as a community. We identify the things that we can improve on. In my country, we have chiefs. So if there's a small squabble about a goat, and a goat that got into somebody's field, you go to the chief. You're not going to the police. You go to the chief. Still in Zimbabwe, that's what we do. And the chief will then come up with a ruling and say, okay, this, and it's actually legally upheld. Oh, your goat, so please, can you compensate by giving this man A, B, C, D? What am I saying? It's talking about that community finding ways to manage conflict, to manage things that obviously when people stay together. So if you want to build stronger communities, start with the family. Start with the family, making sure every member of the family is taken care of. And then as you grow, you look out, the community starts to grow. It's a healthy community. And like I said, there are certain things that are indicators that a community is no longer healthy. If you have like a rise in single mothers, you have a rise in orphans or abandoned children, things like that. Those are things that make communities unhealthy. We cannot just ignore it, sweep it underneath the carpet and say, well, it happens. We need to say, why? Why is this happening? What are we doing? How do we change it? How do we improve it? Listen to the stories and be practical about the actions that we take. And when it comes to usefulness, I cannot speak for every single African society or culture. Like I said, I speak for my own, not because I want to disengage from others, but because it's important for us to learn to be distinctive. So when I'm speaking for Zimbabwean especially, the woman is given a role that she must be useful. When there's a lot of pressure for her, the Murora must be useful, because there's a saying in our country, Mushamkadzi. What it means is the home is the woman. So she's distinctive. You are distinctive. The home is the woman. Then there's a lot of pressure that is put on her. Are you good enough? Are you hardworking enough? Do you give us children? Do you do this? The minute she steps out of line, oh my goodness. So I'm talking about the Zimbabwean perspective particularly, where a lot of pressure is put on women, that if the family is to be successful, it is you. And actually in Zimbabwean culture, if your husband goes out and his shirt is creased, the women in that community will not talk to the man. They will go back to your wife and say, how could you let your husband leave the house with a creased shirt? It is your fault. So that is something that's on Zimbabwean. I don't know other cultures. Like I said, let's have this discussion, understanding that our cultures are different. And in Zimbabwean culture, yes, a lot of pressure is put on the woman to be useful. If you are not going to bring children, then at least bring in wealth. Then at least bring in something. I don't know other cultures. I have observed that other cultures do emphasize a lot that man must be a provider, but I think every person in a culture, or every person in a society and a community, must play a role. You cannot honestly be in that community and be a successful community if we're going to carry other people in it. Everybody must play a role. To what extent that role is played, then that is determined by the people in that community.
Thank you very much, Madam Grace. Thank you so much. I wouldn't know if Madam Miriam still has a question, or has the question been answered in the previous discussion. Madam Miriam, if you're still with us, please unmute yourself and respond, please. Okay, so while we are waiting, I think she has unmuted herself.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Madam Grace. I actually put my hand down because the question that I wanted to ask was asked, and I think you have exhaustively answered it. So thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Miriam is speaking to us from Kenya. And is there any difference from the Kenyan perspective from some of the conversation we've been having? Would like to hear. Miriam.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm actually glad because I'm with Madam Grace, so she said that we're all different. As much as we are in the same continent, an African continent, it doesn't mean that our cultures are the same. They're completely different. And I've been intrigued by what she said about the Shona culture. I've actually been reading about the Shona culture, Madam Grace, and particularly
Oh,
I've been
okay.
yeah, I've been doing Ndagaremba's nervous conditions, and I think I met a lot of the Shona culture from that text. And yeah, there are a lot of different things I learned about the kneeling down while talking to the elders, and also the Nigerian texts, much of them that I've read about the protesting and all that. And from my Kenyan perspective, we don't do that a lot, but there are other different ways that we actually show respect to our elders, like maybe not looking them directly in the eye while they're speaking, that is looking down whenever you're being addressed by an elder person, or maybe sometimes keeping quiet while they are talking. You're not allowed to interject in whichever ways or whatever. So those are part of the different things that I've garnered from your conversation. But also in matters patriarchy and gender roles, I think they cut across, and I'm so happy that today I have learned that personal these things are supposed to come first from a personal point of view before going into the community as a whole. Like there are pros and cons of our cultures, and it doesn't mean that just because it is a culture and it dictates this we females many a times should just go by them. We should pick out the pros and the cons and know how to develop on the pros, and maybe discard the cons, so that we may redefine these cultures in a way that they are not harming any one of us, but at the same time still preserving the essence of it, so that we don't lose our identity in general. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Over to you, Precious. Is Precious on the call?
Okay.
Okay, we need you to speak up. We cannot hear you, Precious.
I can hear Mr. Olamide or anyone who is speaking right now.
Yes, we need you to speak up. We cannot hear you clearly, Precious. Okay, I think Precious is having a bit of technical glitch there. But while you were speaking, Madam Grace, something came to my mind, which has to do with the issue of single parenting, or what we refer to as single mothers. The narrative is, in terms of usefulness, one, which Mr. Olawale asked, and also in terms of something that came to my mind. I'm trying not to lose it. Is it from the cultural angle now? Yeah, I think in terms of the ancestral, the lineage you get now. These days we have single mothers, of which, because they are single mothers, they refuse the fact that their child would be the name of the father, since the father is not there and he has failed to play his role as a father. And before you know it, such a child grows up and cannot really connect to his ancestral line, of which this was not the norms normally in the African culture. As an African boy, when I watched movies such as Roots, Kunta Kinte and all of that, you see them making the education of a child in a way whereby they can come back and say, I am the son of so-so-so, who happens to be the son of so-so-so, the son of so-so-so. And now there's a detachment. People can't really trace their root anymore. They can't trace their origin anymore because we have issues of single mothers and all of that. And if you look at it, I think some of these is a byproduct of maybe the Black American society in terms of, is there anything you want to say in respect to that?
Yeah, I think, no, Black Americans are a group of people that are right now, I feel, are dealing with an incredible amount of damage control or trauma that they have to sort of work through, because they were carried from Africa on boats and they were literally treated like cattle for hundreds of years. It was not just a couple of years and that it is done. It was hundreds of years. Families were separated. A mother is there, the father is there, the children are there. So the family heritage was broken, the culture was broken, the language was stripped from them. They have so much that they're dealing with. And they've tried to put themselves back together. They are constantly trying. They work very hard to redefine themselves, which is their journey. And it's a unique journey and it should be respected. But part of the side effects of some of the trauma that they've suffered is this thing of single mothers. Because the research that I saw that was done where they were looking at the different demographics, and it was a very cruel report, but it was factual, and it showed all the different women, the single mother households, and the highest population by far of single, nearly half the population being of single mothers was the Black women. All the other women were not single mothers. A lot of them were just a small demographic, 20% and that sort of thing. So they went down, did their research. Why is this so? Because they are still dealing with the trauma of the men were not taught to be fathers. They were simply being used. Okay, you go, you have children, you are taken away, you are sold to another plantation, you don't see your children, have some more children, taken away. So that whole thing of growing up with a father figure wasn't there for hundreds of years. We're not just talking about a couple of years. So this is some trauma that they have to be dealing with, that they are trying to deal with. And they are having conversations. What is uncomfortable is finding Africans joining the group and also participating. That's not our trauma. And we need to understand where our trauma is and where their trauma is. As much as we can identify with them, they are our cousins from across the water, but it's not our trauma. So our stories must be distinctive so that we understand. In an African context, there is no woman who will choose to be a single mother. There is no advantage. I don't know any advantage in the African context of a woman being a single mother. There is no advantage. You know what society will say to you. You know what your parents will say. You know what will happen. And so, looking at it that way, we understand that our values are also very different. It's not something to say, oh, this is bad or this is good. No, it's just simply to acknowledge we are different. And the way we're going to deal with this is different. But what we see a lot of Africans, especially the youth, doing is they're joining conversations that are not theirs. Like we have similarities, yes, but we're not in the same position and we're not dealing with the same trauma. We're not recovering from the same thing. We have our own things we're recovering from, which is true. We have our own issues that we're dealing with, which is true. But we will not come up with realistic solutions to our problems if we're going to take it and then keep comparing it with other people and say, yeah, they said this, we should also do this. No, whatever solutions we can come up with for our own communities and our own societies must be homegrown. We must look at our own communities. Where does it come from? How is this happening? What is happening? And I think a lot of it is based on misconstrued ideology behind our own cultural practices. What in my culture, if your mother has two sisters, you're considered to have three mothers. So your mother and her sisters are all considered to be your mother. What does that mean? That they should give you the motherly love and everything. Same thing if your father has brothers, those are all your fathers. So you have your big father, your small father. You call him small father. Bamnini is the term we use to refer to your father's brother. What does that mean? You were taken care of, not just by your core family, which is your mother and father, you were taken care of by the community. So the children were raised. If your father didn't tell you about your grandfather, his brother would. If your mother didn't tell you about her people, her sister would. You were raised by a community. But as we modernized, as we changed, as other influences came, we rejected some of these practices, or we got carried away with things that divided us. And some of those things that we need to help us, to build us, those things are falling away by the wayside. We're not dealing with those issues. We're not dealing with why are our family setups, why aren't we having that core where there's my nini, my guru, which is my small mother, big mother, where are they going to, what is happening in our communities and our societies that is making it difficult for these people to stand out and be a significant part of a child's life. Because some of these things were not issues because the family came and covered it up. We didn't hang our dirty linen. Yes, there would be, but we covered. And sometimes if a woman came home with a child, in the Ndebele culture, they became the child of the uncle. So she would take on the mother's name and the lineage of the uncle. She became the child of the uncle. She's our child. So she's not lost. He is not lost. He's ours. And the men would immediately take the role of the father and play that role and teach the child his culture. Where are you from? Who are you? But we are losing that. And we need to know and understand why. Where is it going? How are we losing that?
Thank you so much, Madam Grace. Precious, are you there?
Yes, I am. Okay. Thank you
So
very much.
let's take one or two questions from you, Precious, before.
Yeah, so this is very profound. I think it still boils down to we owning our stories, we owning our culture, and still being who we are wherever we find ourselves. So I have a couple of questions, but I'll try to streamline them. This is going to be like a 21 question somewhat. Society and family have found a way to make abuse and abusive marriages seem lighter than they are. And it gets worse when women are taught and coerced into making excuses for their abusive partners. There's even the part where women are made to feel pressured and submit to a man who shows them his lightest affection or attention because they'll give the excuse that he's not being physically abusive. And abuse is not limited to the physical aspect. I think people can be abused emotionally, mentally, psychologically in different ways. So I just want to know, is it okay to overlook an abuser's actions because they are also products of an abusive home or victims of circumstances, so to say, and in quotes, it's not their fault? Because in one of the stories in Song of the Survivor, a woman there, I think Mainini, has an experience with an abusive marriage where her husband has a history of poor parenting and not being taught what a good home should look like and all of that. And he projects it on his wife. And at some point, she begins to feel pity and sorry for him and starts making excuses for him. That probably it's not his fault. He didn't have any idea. It wasn't totally his fault. He wasn't raised right. That's why he's behaving like that. Should we excuse the behaviors of abusers because of their background or their history? That's my question.
Yes, we should understand the abuser. I think that's important. It helps to rationalize the situation for you to understand the abuser, that like in the story you mentioned, she realizes that he didn't know what a happy family or a marriage was supposed to look like. So he did what he felt this is the right thing to do. He was following what he thought was, but that shouldn't stop her. There's a point where she realized, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm done. And she left. So it shouldn't stop you from finding your own happiness. She tried, she stayed, she tried. She tried to work it out. She tried to be what she was expected. And she finally realized that no matter what she did, she was still going to be abused. She was still going to be, and where she got to the point where she decided, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm standing on my own 2 feet. I don't know how. I have no idea where I will start, but I'm going to start. And then she did that. And she made the decision to liberate herself and leave. Because as much as we can understand the abuser and be respectful of the reason why he abused, I think that is also important for your liberation, to know that it's not your fault. It wasn't you. You didn't trigger this. This person is like this. It's literally calling it out for what it is. You can't just go to a cat and say, okay, today this cat must act like a donkey. It's a cat. It will be a cat. So the sooner you realize I'm dealing with a cat, I'm not dealing with a donkey, I'm dealing with a monkey, I'm not dealing with, know what you're dealing with. And make the decision. Do I really want a monkey in my yard? No, I don't. So you chase it out. You make the decision. Do I want this? This is what it is. Do I want it? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then you make the necessary moves. But like I said, I keep emphasizing that we cannot prescribe a woman's choice. There are some women that will understand the abuser, and it will be for them an excuse to keep trying. We cannot diminish that choice and say that is a wrong choice, because she really believes he'll change and she believes she can change him. Good luck with her. If she is still so convinced that this is what she wants to do, then she will do it. I feel it's erroneous to dismiss a woman's attempt at surviving her situation. So if the abuser's excuses or the abuser's own trauma is enough for her to keep staying, then let her stay. I think the most powerful words that I ever heard were from a friend who once said to me, if you choose to stay, I'm going to be with you. If you choose to leave, I will still be with you. Whatever your choice may be, mine is to stand next to you. And I think as a community, as a society, for certain cases, I think it's best for us to take the same stance. Ours is to stand next to you. Ours is to offer you the help you need, either way, whether you're going to be in the relationship or whether you choose to leave.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for
We would need you to speak up, Precious.
Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, better.
So I want to move to my next question on describing who a good man is. The same story, after her experience with a bad marriage, and she now has this one night adventure of happiness and excitement with Bongani, with a new guy. And from everything that happens, it seems to be they have a good time, and it seems to really be a good partner. But knowing that a lot of work goes into building a committed relationship or marriage, and understanding that good men, it is a popular opinion that there are not many men that are good out there. So I want to know what defines or what should define a good man, and how do we bring an end to this popular opinion that there are not many good men out there, or there are no good men out there, because it seems as if we've put the spotlight on women a lot, and maybe the needs of men have been abandoned or something, or somewhat. Yeah. So how do we also bring them back into the spotlight and celebrate good men out there? Because I believe not all men are bad or abusive.
Yeah, not all men are abusers. There are lots of good men out there, but I think also it doesn't mean that just because you've been in an abusive relationship, you jump straight into another relationship without much thought. That was deliberate because there is always supposed to be a time for healing after a traumatic experience. Otherwise, you carry that trauma into the next relationship. And there are several stories which have good men, so-called the good men, and they're the healthy marriages. In Penelope's death, the last story, there's actually a healthy marriage where there's the banter between we actually hear the story of Penelope's death between the man and the wife, and she's busy serving her husband food and also serving him all the story, juicy gossip. That is a healthy marriage. It's two people who love each other and are just enjoying their relationship within the societal context, and they're just, being naughty and gossiping at a funeral. There are so many healthy marriages, and there's so many examples of healthy marriages, and those are there as well. We cannot ignore the healthy ones, but the spotlight will always, unfortunately, go to the ones that are unhealthy, because we get shocked by those. We're like, but why is this happening? And with good reason. We should ask those questions and get the how can I put it, solutions, or how can I think more like we look for ways that we can avert this thing from growing, from making it a cancer, or we can stop having extreme results from these abusive situations, because we don't like it when the wife eventually gets beaten so badly she cannot see in one eye, or she dies, or something like that. So those are the things we need to take action on, but having a better understanding of it, and also presenting men that are in good and healthy relationships, that is also useful. There are some, and there's also one where the woman was traumatized by what the man did, but she still loved him. In the story about the girl who went to the man's brother in order to get pregnant so that they could have a child, she still loved her husband. She was hurt by him, but she still loved him. She went back to him. She found a way to get even, but she still went back to him. She still loved him. She still continued with him. And who knows? That is also a relationship that is in a way healthy, because they loved each other, even though there's some unsavory things that happened in their relationship, but they dealt with them together.
Sure. In essence, people that have just come out from abusive relationships should at least find time to heal first before they move into another relationship. Yeah, thank you for the question, for that, answering that question, ma'am. I think Madam Miriam is raising her hand. You have a question, ma'am?
Yes, please. Okay. I have a question, especially on this topic of abusive men and all that. Madam Grace, don't you think that trauma, is a kind of these people who experience trauma in their maybe childhood, or during all their lives being brought up and all that, is kind of, it manifests in them like some kind of a disease, and these people usually have a way with their victims. We find that many of these sociopaths or psychopaths or narcissistic abusive men, many a times they have a way with their victims in a way that we can't say that these their wives think straight many a times, because there is a way they are very much manipulative. Like they do something and then maybe act apologetically or maybe ask for forgiveness even a dozen times. And that is why we have these women keep on staying and thinking that, okay, he did this, but yeah, he apologized, but he's going to do it over and over again. And this woman is going to sit there thinking that there is a time that this person is going to change. And if we say that we cannot prescribe their choices, what we if we cannot prescribe their choices, yet they are not in their right minds, or they are not thinking straight, they are not seeing through this person's acts because they have been manipulated, and then we just leave them there, and towards the end of the day they lose themselves or even end up losing their lives. What do you think about that?
I think that's a very important point. That is very significant. But like I said, everything is in context. I'm not saying that we stand by, but we can offer help. There are professional organizations that can help, psychologists, trained therapists, people that can help, community projects. But also, as family members, as communities, sometimes I feel it's very dangerous to overprescribe a situation unless you are in it. So when you have a situation where somebody is in that situation and they are equipped, like that's why I talk for the equipped for self-preservation, they will make the necessary changes. They need to make those necessary changes on their own. Because getting away from a narcissist is not easy. And like you rightly said, they're extremely good at what they do. They know how to trap the individual. But I think there's that light bulb moment for a lot of women. And I'm simply saying that when that light bulb goes off and she says, I cannot stay and needs to go we need to say, I support you to go. But if you say to that woman or try and push her out and say, no, you're staying with the narcissist, you need to leave, and she's not ready to leave, she won't. She will resist you. She won't leave. You will try and you'll end up isolating her further, and she will be drawn further into his net. So it's a very delicate situation. That's why I say it's best not to quickly prescribe, rushing and saying to somebody, your husband is a narcissist, leave him. She might be angry with you and probably not tell you again what she's going through, because as she's going through her own things, like I'm saying, if that light bulb hasn't gone off, she's not going to leave. And she will resist any attempts you make of what you think is help. You will actually make the situation worse. That's why trying not to prescribe a solution is the best. Because at some point you just say, whatever you decide, I feel, whatever you decide, if you're going to stay, I'm with you. If you're going to leave, I'm with you, so that when she's ready to leave, she leaves and you're able to provide that guidance. Pushing her or trying to convince her or trying to preach to her or trying to tell her that she should leave, you might end up losing her and losing the opportunity to actually help. So this is what I think from the experiences that I've had.
Thank you very much, Madam Grace, because this issue of abuse and the rest can be hugely controversial, especially in African context. And it has very profound foundations that need to be discussed. We can't even say everything here because of time. So I'll be moving on to the next question, which is as controversial as this previous one, but I think it's important for us to address it because it has left people in a state of dilemma. For ambitious young women who find themselves in an uncomfortable situation where they have an unwanted pregnancy, should abortion be endorsed, and should it be a lasting solution for them in this kind of situation? That's my question now.
Okay, you know what? I think there's a danger in over-prescribing and saying a situation is yes or no when you're dealing with multiple contexts. abortion, it should not be like an option. We should not be saying, go and freely abort your child, because a child is a very precious gift from God. However, certain situations are extremely sensitive, and people find themselves in certain situations whereby they really know that they cannot take care of that child. And the sooner they make up their mind what they want to do, ultimately that is much better. Because I think we also need to look at the full picture and look at what happens to the children. If you've seen the number of abandoned children, if you've been to orphanages, if you've been to hospitals and seen what happens to these children that are born in unfavorable circumstances, you would think twice too. So I think as a society, we need to have the facts, the figures. We need to have a verification what exactly is going on, what causes this, and then we can provide the best support. Because quickly rushing to say abortion is a big no-no without fully understanding the different circumstances can cause more harm than good. You're blinkering and you're saying, I'm just going to give you this answer. This is what, this is what people want to hear, that, abortion is bad. But there are some cases that are extremely sensitive that are difficult to control. What happens when a child or a woman has been raped? Because she will not want to look after that child and she doesn't know who the father is. What does she do then? What actions do we justify? She should keep the child. What will she name him or her? How will that child grow? I watched a heartbreaking video of a woman who was beating a 2-year-old child because she wanted to get back at the father. So she was taking a video of herself abusing a 2-year-old child. Now, I'm a mother, and watching a child cry in a certain way broke my heart a million pieces. The stories that are out there are extremely bad. If we have been privileged not to have experienced some of these things, we must not be quick to dismiss other people's experiences. That's why the stories are important to be read, to be known, to be understood. And then we come up with practical solutions instead of high-sounding, moralistic solutions that end up creating more harm and pain than they should.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was also going to say that you can never really tell the amount of pain that comes with, not knowing what next step to take in life unless you've been in that person's shoes. And the standards and morale that the society has given us as solutions to this kind of situations are sometimes not very practical and do not lead us anywhere truly. Yeah. So we're gradually rounding up, and I'll just ask one last question generally. So in what ways do you think this book will shape lovers of literature and their view of the subject and the world? Yeah. Basically, that's the question, man.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, sorry. As I said, in what way or ways do you think this book, Song of the Survivor, would shape lovers of literature and their view of the subject, of literature as a subject, of the book title as a subject, and the world?
Okay. The Song of the Survivor is just, I think I want it to be a tool book. Yes, as a form of literature, that's fine, but I'm really more interested in it getting into as many women's hands as possible, because I've had feedback from some women, and the most gratifying feedback I ever got was from a woman who was close to me, who literally said to me, "Thank you. I've finally made an important decision that I was very hesitant on." I don't know what the decision was. She never discussed it with me, but I'm glad that she could make that decision. So for me, it's not about it impacting the literature world. I wish it would impact our communities, and there would be more women that would say, I read it and I made this decision. I read it and I felt comfortable about this situation. I read it and I loved myself more. It's an act of love. Of, if you read it, are you going to love yourself more, judge yourself less, and accept yourself for who you are, and know you are enough, and just prepare yourself, whatever it is you want to do, that reaching out for that self-actualization. So the literature part is fine, but I would really, my greatest desire is to see more women read it, and also be inspired to write their own stories, to tell their own stories, to find a way to say, hey, you know, I read this book and I was inspired to write my own. Just like how I read books and I couldn't find the narrative that went with me, I wrote what went with me, and I would want to hear what goes with somebody else. And I feel Africa has got a wide, vast variety of wonderful stories, but I think we limit ourselves. We self-regulate very deeply. Oh, it's not going to be good enough. So as it is, a small little piece of literature, I hope it can inspire more women, more men as well. It doesn't have to be women, to just write their stories, tell your side of the story, tell what you feel is important. Let us know, let us understand. I feel we need to search for that deeper understanding of each other.
True. So do we have to be creative in the natural sense? Do we have to naturally be creative to be able to tell our stories or write our stories? Or do we just write it as it is? You know, I don't think not everybody knows how to write or has the capacity to write their stories in a comprehensible way. So can everybody be creative enough to write their stories or tell their stories comprehensively?
I think we can all tell our stories. We tell our stories in different ways, in different platforms. Some are poets, some write songs, some are animated storytellers. Some can talk about it, they cannot write it, but we can direct it. You can find the platform that you feel is necessary. It can be a community project. Yes, we learn about literature and writing, and that's where some of our writers come from. But I also feel where people have a burning desire to say something, to tell a story, they write. Because the first William Shakespeare certainly didn't go to any institution to learn to be a writer as great as he was. And so let's write our stories without feeling that we have to do a course first in order to write the story. Write the story, see what happens. I don't believe in limiting people. Write your story, see what happens. Share with, if there are more platforms for us to share those stories, then the better.
Yeah, thank you abundantly, Madam Joy. Thank you so much. It's been a nice time having this conversation with you, and without any iota of doubt, I know every one of us here has been able to hold on to something that has stood out for us one way or the other. Before we close today's discussion, I personally have notes that I've noted and learned from the book itself and from today's conversation, that it's paramount to understand that people, women and men alike, should hold their beliefs and values in high esteem. They shouldn't let society define what and how their experiences should be. You know, they should own their story. It is their story. They shouldn't allow themselves to be stereotyped or water down the genuinity of their experiences. And they shouldn't let society define what and how their experiences should be. And we should also embrace the diversity in our culture as Africans. We place a lot of emphasis on that. The fact that we are all Africans doesn't mean we don't have diverse cultures. It doesn't mean we have similarities, of course, but then we should also try to admit, let people know that as unified as we want to be, we are diverse in our way of life.
Yes.
I also learned that people should realize that the story, culture, and journey of their life should not be something to be ashamed of. Shame is a very overstated thing in society. So who you are now, what you've been, your story, your journey, good or bad, is a beautiful illustration of your bravery, the hurdles you have faced, the scars you have overcome, no matter how hurting they might have been, so and all of that. So we should motivate ourselves, own our stories, and keep doing the change out there. Thank you profoundly, Madam Grace. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So,
Thank you as
on this
well.
note,
Thank you
I
for
want to
this
thank everyone.
opportunity.
Thank you so much. In fact, it's a great opportunity that you chose to speak with us, and it has been insightful so far. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you everybody for joining us for this inspiring session of our text-based discussion presented by EL Network, the subsidiary of Everything Literature Limited, the fully and enriching experience exploring the depths of Song of the Survivor with Madam Grace Maguri and the profound things that we represent and present. We also extend our heartfelt gratitude to our guests. I keep saying it, we can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your wealth of knowledge and experience, and everything you've shared with us. Thank you. You not only enlightened us, you've also reminded us that literature brings beauty to our world. Thank you so much. You also enlighten us. Literature enlightens us and sheds light on critical issues and things that need to be addressed in society as well. And special thanks goes to our hosts, Mr. Olamide Popoola, for guiding this conversation with expertise and passion. Thank you for making the session a memorable one. Once again, thanks to everyone who participated in today's discussion. Thank you for being available, not just being in the audience, but making your own contribution to making this discussion a success. Thank you so much. And thank you once again, Madam Grace, for being vulnerable with your experiences that will beautifully listening to you. So until next time, everyone, let's keep reading, keep writing, and keep sharing our story with the world.